Hello and welcome to this week's LTV news from LTV1. Now we hope that you had a good new year and that you ran in style, and let's hope that 2012 will be a good year for us again, and we hope to bring you some very good programs over the course of 2012. Now on New Year's Day, the Macroom Annual Hunt meeting took place in Ferville, and we went along with our camera just to pick up some of the proceedings of what happened there, and we bring you this now.
Come with me over the mountain, follow me down through the glen, walk with me through the Lee Valley and see the beauty within. The people around you are charming, their gentleness soft as a breeze. They smile and greet you and welcome as you walk up the lovely main street.
On behalf of Macroom Hunt Club, I'd like to welcome everyone here today. It's a lovely day for the first day of the year. I hope you'll have a great day and wish everyone the best of luck in the new year. I'd like to thank all the farmers whose land we hunt over, and only for them we have no sport. And I'd like to wish everyone a happy and a peaceful new year in 2012. Thanks very much, Linda.
My beautiful hometown, Macroom, 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 my beautiful hometown, Macroom. Bishops and patriots have stood here, their memories are still to be found. As you stand in the square and look all around at the beauty and history of this lovely town, if you wish you could walk through the castle domain and see the mist rise o'er the river, and others they stroll, their hearts entwined, hoping to stay here forever. Macroom, Macroom, my beautiful hometown, Macroom, 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 my beautiful hometown, Macroom. The old man, he stands at the foot of Slavey and looks out over Macroom. He thinks of the fairs and the days that are gone when he was a boy in the town. His shoulders are slumped and his eyes are dim, but sparkle the new way he tells of the days that he fished when he was a boy on the beautiful river so long. Macroom, Macroom, my beautiful hometown, Macroom, 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 my beautiful hometown, Macroom, my beautiful hometown, Macroom.
Happy New Year then, Joe.
Now, on January the 6th, Trelton Martin and Fermer, they're having a Christmas party and no members night in Drummy's Bar in Drumcanra, starting at 9 p.m. Music and food will be supplied, and they ensure there'll be a good night here. So that's Trelton Martin and Fermer Christmas party and no members night on the 6th of January in Drummy's Bar in Drumcanra, and you're all invited to come along. Now, last week we brought you kind of a rundown of what happened in Macroom over the first 6 months, and tonight I want to bring you the next 6 months of the year of 2011 and just let you know, to refresh your minds, what happened in Macroom and the Lee Valley. Now, in July of 2011, 30 new jobs were announced in Ballingeary. Flag Hole in the Moon gets underway in Ballincollig. Weekly trad nights run throughout the Lee Valley and other summer events to lighten, I suppose, the economic gloom, including Dunamore Carnival, the Dan Cochran Summer School in Chigila. Rourke Art Exhibition takes place in the Town Hall Gallery in Macroom. 40 Towers, the dining experience, starts outside in Gugan Barra. And Fela Kilamatra with Nodagolera and Munster's Mick O'Driscoll exchange skills. The Smile Green Exchange Programme is promoted by Macroom E. That all happened in July. In August, Feda Nalaka attracts Christy Moore, Glenn Henson, Carol Sullivan, Phil Coulter, Mihala Marahatik, and many more, including the now President, Michael D. Higgins. They were all up in Cooley for this festival. The Time and Space exhibition runs in the Town Hall Gallery. 2 bridges over the River Salon run into planning difficulties. The All Ireland Vintage Rally is held in Crookstown. And out in Barraboon and Cooley and Ballingeary and in Escala, all their shows take place. Inchigida and Coachwood are promoting their summer festivals in the month of August. In September, a parish mission, very successful parish mission, was held in Macroom. The Great Famine is remembered in Coachwood, and in Ballinagree they hold their 9th annual Vintage Harvest Festival. Macroom Tidy Towns marks increased by 2 in the National Tidy Towns competition, and Carrigadroid and Kilnardish, they win the County Litter Challenge. Bingor Festival holds a very successful festival this year, and Clonroy opens its new magnificent Astra Tough Pitch. In Macroom, Boots Pharmacy move into town, along with South Dock and offices for the HSE, all move down to the Fair Green Plaza in Macroom, and the Cock Ladies win their 6th All-Ireland football title in 7 years. We'd like to congratulate Breach Cockery, Juliet Murphy, Rena Murphy, Rona Nibukla, Frankie Hennan, Justin McCarthy, Eamon Ryan, who are all from the Lee Valley and to be involved in this success with the ladies football team. October, the festival season ends with Johnstone Kilmichael Festival. The Cast Hotel celebrates its 60th birthday with a gala staff night, and Macroom Pioneers celebrate their 80th anniversary with an event in the Father Ryan Hall. The Bury Gap hosts one-act drama festival, and Strictly Come Dancing is a huge success, and 46 pilgrims from Midcork head off to the Holy Land. Voting in the presidential election and referenda is held in the community sports complex in the castle grounds. That was on October 27th. November, Borgash networks meet with householders and businesses in Macroom to inform them that the natural gas is now connected to Danone at Castleview and should be available to customers in the urban area in Macroom by July 2012. Kevin O'Sullivan, Macroom Boxing Clubs, win gold and Munster Championship medals. Ourselves, local television, we're back in the air in November and will be running for 6 months. The book of photographs, Mosby to the Lens of Dennis Deneen, is launched as a fundraiser for Macroom senior citizens and proved to be a huge success, with the first 1,500 copies sold within a week and a half and a rerun of 1,000 copies reprinted, and they are also going out the door as the man says, like hot buns. Excuse me. December, cold and damp, but not as bad as it was in 2010. But leading up to the Christmas, Macroom Lee Valley Enterprise Board organised a very successful Macroom Christmas night on the 8th of December, with lots of stalls in the square, carousels, and all the businesses open until around 9:30, and this was a great kick-off to Christmas. Also on that weekend, Santa's Polar Express made its way with the kids to the castle grounds to meet Santa in his grotto, and the Christmas pantomime Goldilocks and the Three Bears was a huge success and had to be extended to an extra night in order to cater for the crowds. That was a review of 2011. As you can see, there was a lot of happenings around Macroom and the Lee Valley, and hopefully 2012 will be as good as 2011. That's my lot for you this week. I hope that you enjoyed reflecting back over the past 12 months. And until next week, I'll say to you, good night and God bless.
Welcome to the Clondrohid Tavern for this local television presentation. And your introduction there was a piece of music called The Gentle Maiden, played by Dennis Lucy. The Clondrohid Tavern is at the western end of Clondrohid village, here on the banks of the Fohorish River. And a new pub opened here in February 2000. And our host tonight have put a terrific job into making this a nice place for Clondrohid people. It's a great amenity to Clondrohid and its surrounding area. And we have our hosts here tonight, Teresa and Paddy, up there, who have provided this facility for us. This pub was built on the site of an older premises here, which was for a number of years the owner was a character known locally as Mick Denny. And now I hand you over on my right to Michael O'Leary, who will sing a song for you composed by a local composer, George Curtin, about Matty and Mary from Liscaragan.
And you've heard about Mary, who's cross and contrary. She says, Matt, if you've come to exchange a few blows, I'll fight you with wattles, with sticks, stones and bottles. I've fought in more battles now than you have got toes. And then Matty grew shaky, without a mistake he was getting quite what a shame to behold. And says he, pray excuse me, and oh don't abuse me, you dare not ill-use me, for I'm surely too old. And besides, if we wrangled and I should be strangled, by and by you'd be dangled at the end of a rope. Then the devil would take you to hell and he'd bake you, and for your mistake too, in spite of the Pope. Then Matty fell silent as Mary grew violent. Her temper did boil, 'twas frightful to hear, or to see Matty hopping as she went on knapping. There was no use in stopping her, devil's the fear. She blackened and blued him, and she properly stewed him. By gosh, when I viewed him, my poor heart felt sore. Oh, the creature was battered, his features were spattered, and his teeth, they were scattered all over the floor. Now 'twas fairly astounding the way she kept pounding. Her knocks were resounding while echoes did roar. And John Foley says, damn him, sure why don't he keep from her? For she's as bold as a ram and as fierce as a boar. 'Twas really appalling to hear the wretch squalling, and as he was falling, well, he called for police. When we tried to defend him, she cried, devil mend him. Tonight I will end him, and then we'll have peace. But his dog moved behind her, sure she thought he'd not mind her. You're alone, sure he'd blind her without much delay. And he kept her quite busy until she got dizzy, and Matt by this time he had clear got away. And as homeward he stumbled, he groaned and he grumbled, his clothes and he bundled, and he made for the train. Well, he made his escape, or 'twas a man the same shape, for I see in the newspapers that he landed in Spain. And so, Matt, no, my darling, my advice, don't be scorning. Don't come back adorning your old haunts any more, or Mary will fix you. 'Tis queer how she nicked you. She properly licked you, and your visage she tore. For you took her so easy, for acting so lazy. You must have been crazy with your brain in the fog. For in spite of resistance, she'd end your existence, but for the assistance you got from your dog.
Well, I suppose no session would be right without having a Shanachie on the premises. And tonight we have with us Mick Lehan from the Red Well to tell us a story, and his story tonight is about Mick the Fiddler.
Of all those that came back from America, and surely they were a colourful bunch, because they all had fairly colourful stories about the happenings in New York and what themselves did or didn't do. Of all those that came home, Mick the Fiddler gave the best value for money. Mick left for America the day after setting the barley in the high field with his brother and his brother's wife, Mal Phil, and he was home again in time to cut it. He didn't stay away very long, but a lot of people were glad to see him go, because while he was around, there were very few people that he didn't annoy day in, day out. They weren't much heard about him after he going away for a while. They were hoping that he'd extend his stay there. But after 3 or 4 months, he wrote home, and he gave them a few details of what he was doing. And he told them that when he was going over, you know, they had very rickety old boats that time. When he was going over, he made off that the crowd that owned the boat made a fortune in food, because he said no one could keep a bit down for the first 3 weeks. They knew from that when he'd come back, you couldn't believe one word he'd tell them about America. The time passed anyway, and it was the harvest time, as I say. Mick returned. When he did come back, when he came off the boat, he got the train to the village, and at the slope of the railway, 3 or 4 friends and family went to meet him, and when they were standing there to welcome him back, He was looking at him. He knew no one. Even those that were in the same book as him going to school. He had a crease in his pants to shave a gooseberry. And he had a red tie on him. I wouldn't like to let any bull near it. When he came home to the house, to the brother and the brother's wife, Moll Phil, she had a nice little cat sitting in front of the fire, and he said, "Say, Moll, what's that black thing doing sitting in front of the fire?" Well, she said, "Mick, is a how you can recognise the cat." That was all right. But the following nights after he came home, all the neighbours of the locality would be in to hear all the news about New York. And indeed, Mick the Fiddler had plenty of it for him. Now, the brother's wife, Moll Phil, didn't like a bit of this, because they'd be bringing all the mud of the locality in their boots, and they'd stay all hours of the morning, and she didn't like a bit of that because she just liked to be up early. When he started telling him anyway about, he started by describing the trip over, and he said, "You have to land in Ellis Island before they let you into America at all." Ellis Island, he said, was 12 miles long and 5 miles wide. He said, bought by the Dutch from the Red Indians for $50. Don't you think, he said, there was bargains going in those days? Well, he said, before we'd be left into America, he said, in Ellis Island, you'd have to go through a medical, and you'd have to go into the doctor naked. Mick said that was no bother. But when himself was going in, he said he met one of the cases from Tournonach out against him. And he make you a fig leaf with his 2 hands. And he said, mind yourself, he said, to the lady doctor that's inside. Sure, Mick said, the bloody fool, if he covered his face instead, she might know him the next time. At that time, you see, they like people to have a little bit of education. You could be asked a simple thing like the vocabulary up on the wall, like A, B, and C. But if you failed in that, you'd be asked a general knowledge question to describe what a cloud was, or a river, or something like that. But he was telling him that there was this fella, he was one of the Hannafins, he said, from the butt of the Paps. He was over there, he said, and the poor man, he said, he hadn't one word that he could put with another one. He said, if they showed him B up on the wall, he couldn't distinguish it from a bull's foot. So they asked him one day anyway, when they discovered that he was fairly illiterate, they said, could he describe what a lake was? I could, he said, damn fine. He said, a lake, he said, is a hole in the ass of a kettle. He explained to him anyway that when he started working over in New York, he said he did several jobs. Well, he said he didn't stay in any of them too long. But he was working in this particular job one morning, he said, and then he was on his way to work. He said they were building one of them skyscrapers. He said that was one of the reasons himself he had to leave America, because he wasn't trying to get a crick in his neck from looking up at them. They were building one of these skyscrapers, he said, and he said they do things very fast over there. He said when he was coming home from work in the evening, he said they were evicting tenants for non-payment of rent. And he said they go up so high with him. He said one night, he said, there was a fierce furore. He said they had to put up scaffolding and take a block off the top for it to let the moon pass. And he said they go up so high, he said. And one of the lads alongside him said, how do you mean so high? He said, what about St. Finbarr's Cathedral inside in Cork? Would they go higher than that? What did you say, says Mick, St. Finbarr's Cathedral? Well, he said they'll go down that far before they start going up at all. He said that at that time there was a population explosion in New York. So his job was all day long with 4 horses drawing a tank of water around the churches to get it blessed, he said, for baptizing babies. And he said in one of the churches, he said there'd be 4 priests all day long with their sleeves rolled up outside the door of the church baptizing babies and water flowing down the street. That was all right until a couple of people started popping questions about the setup over in America, and they had relations there, like there was Sheehans, they had cousins in Staten Island, and there was a few more of them, and they started all asking him questions. So, because if they did, they weren't short of answers. A couple of people wanted to know where their aunt was and where their grand-aunt was and all things like that, but he was able to give them all the information. But he was inclined to be making diagrams in front of the fire like that to see where the ashes was out, about the streets and the avenues and the skyscrapers. Well, he said they'd be, the avenues, he said, would go north and south, he said, and the streets, he said, would go east and west. There'd be 4 skyscrapers to the block, he said, and 8 blocks to the mile, if we could believe him. But he was there of a night and he explaining that, so he was pulling out ashes, and as more people were asking him questions, he'd have to pull out more ashes and more ashes. And here was Moll Phil below at the back door and a facing her like the map of South America. She was a very house-proud little woman, and she didn't like the heart of the fire being all daubed with ashes, fresh ashes, and particles rising up to the lamp. And here was Mick to see, and he's stroking away here and there through the ashes, and he's drawing the streets and the avenues. And up in the mantelpiece, there was this honest-to-God old cat, and every now and then she'd sit up and yawn. She was kind of getting bored with the stories, all right. And then there was this big foal of a sheepdog, and he lying just outside where the ashes were. And Mick was very wary of the sheepdog to say, because if anyone put any speck in him to say, he was a friendly old fella, he'd start wagging the tail, with the result that the dust of the ashes would start rising up very definitely towards the ceiling, and there'd be bits of windows and doors open, and Moll Phil was below, and I tell you, she wasn't over thankful to him. And he was here of a night, and he had everything under control, and he up and down the avenues and the streets, and there was this poor man over in the corner, and he looked at it, he said, and a tear came to his eye, and he said, where in the middle of all that ashes now, he said, would my sister Noni be? Well, a while now, says Mick, have one address for her? I have, says the poor man. He said, 452 42nd Street, that's all I can tell you. And Mick was looking down the ashes, and next thing he pointed down there, he said, she hangs out, you'll bang on, says your man, because she works in a laundry. And with that, there was another man over in the corner, started asking another question about a brother of his that was over there with 42 years. So there was nothing for Mick to do, only pull more ashes out of the fire and pull everyone back a bit. Well, no. At this stage, the dog had to be moved. So Mick was being very canny about this to say. And he said, good dog now, good dog, come on now. Good dog. And instead of moving, the dog started shaking the tail. And the more Mick called him, he started propelling the tail. Like that, you see. Well, there was, just for all the world, you know, like a volcano, the cloud rose up towards the sky, up towards the ceiling. And he was, good dog, good dog, good dog, good dog, come on. And in doing so, he never thought what he was doing. Wasn't the cat above thinking that herself was going to get a basin of milk or something? And she started yawning, and she started licking her front. And in the finish, she could wait no more anyway. She jumped off the mantelpiece down into the middle of the Hudson. That was all right. Mick was faced with calling two of them away. Here, good doggy, come on, good doggy, come on. Psh, 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 let you come so up. Psh, psh, psh. And he was trying to draw out the map to explain about the man. And in the finish anyway, the dog got up and he walked up Fifth Avenue. Wouldn't you think it was Patrick's Day? And they were just going putting him towards the floor, and the next thing, the cat started rolling herself in the dust. And it started rising up again, the whole lot of it up towards the lamp. And Norman, people were rubbing their eyes, and there was water coming out of their eyes, and there was salt water coming out of their eyes. And he was just going to start talking again, explaining to her man, when in the back door comes Moll Phil with the brush, and I tell you, she wasn't long clearing the streets of New York.
Is Mary Toomey, and she's going to sing for you a song called I Often Think of Home.
I often think of home, dear Olie, when I am all alone and far away. I sing an old refrain, dear Olie, for it recalls to me a bygone day. It takes me back again to meadows fair, where sunlight's golden rays beam everywhere. My childhood joys again come back to me, my mother's face in fancy too I see. It was my mother taught me how to sing, and to that melody my heart will cling. I'm never sad or lone while on my way, as long as I can sing the Olie. Though years have passed and gone, the Olie. And though my heart is young, my head is grey, yet still the echoes ring the Olie. And dear old memories forever stay. My song can bring me visions full of light, and sweetest dreams throughout the darkest night. Of all that life can give, this song is best. I'll take it with me when I go to rest. And when at last my journey here is o'er, 'twill sound more joyfully than e'er before. Then up to heaven I will make my lay. The angels too will sing Diolie. That's it.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, we're here in the Clondrohot Tavern, and we're on the banks of the Fohorish River, which is flowing just below us there. And there's the bridge across the Fohorish, is the bridge which gives its name to Clondrohot. It's the Meadow Bridge, Clondrohot. So, from the earliest of times, there was a ford across the river there, and in the middle of the 17th century, there was a timber structure across the bridge, across the river, a timber structure across the river, which went into decay during the Cromwellian period and became impassable owing to the height of the water. In the early 1840s, prior to the famine, there was a cement structure there, a bridge of antiquity, we are told, with 5 arches. But in the great floods of October 1875, that bridge suffered severe damage, and there was £100 granted for its repair, which started in the summer of 1876. But the county surveyor discovered, when he came to have a look at it, that the centre of the bridge was so badly damaged, the masonry at the centre of the bridge was so badly damaged, that he had to get rid of 3 arches altogether and replace them with 2. So we were left with a 4-arch bridge, which stands to this day crossing the Fohorish just below us there in Clondrohot. And now I hand you over to Ted Keller to sing a song entitled The Cabin with the Roses Round the Door.
The night is falling fast, and I'm thinking of the past, as I'm sitting with my darling by my side. She's an old and wrinkled dame, yet I love her still the same. as the day she first became my bonny bride. And I think I see her now, with a smile upon her brow, when she vowed she'd be mine forevermore. I had no land nor riches wide, but I took her home with pride to that cabin with the roses round the door. That dear old cabin, that sweet old cabin, 'tis my home and my native shore. I would yield a little sigh, I have lived and I have died in that cabin with the roses round the door. And light-hearted did I toil, and I found a fertile soil. It gave me back for my work 100-fold. I had enough, and I could spare for the poor a tiny share. And I envied not the planter or his work.
And now we have a man to play two hornpipes for you on the accordion. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Lynch. Right, we have our Shanachie McLehan from the Redwell back with us again, and he's going to tell us two stories this time. One he tells me, which is very short.
Randy Crow.
It's a story about a Randy Crow, and the other one is about a fella called Timmy Paddy Mickey.
This is a small story about this crow. He was a very randy crow. It won't take too long. Only a couple of minutes. He was a very randy crow, and this particular morning he got a hold of a jug of brandy. And with his beak he went down as far as he could in the brandy. And as we all know, brandy works very fast. So after about a quarter of an hour or 20 minutes, constantly drinking the brandy out of the jug, there was a small bit of a wobble started coming in him. And the next thing he said, now that I'm in farm, he said, I'll go in search of business. So he left the treetop anyway, where he was after drinking the brandy, and he went flying down across the country over a couple of fields. He was flying away for a while, but as he was going along, the brandy was still coming into effect more and more. But there was no fear of him because he had a fair idea where he was going. He was flying away down over a couple of fields anyway, when down below on top of, in a farmyard, standing on the gable end of a house, he spotted a bird. So he started dropping down from the altitude he was flying above. And as I said, the brandy was really coming to effect at this stage. He started dropping down a bit, and as he was coming down nearer, he discovered it was a dove. So to cut a long story short anyway, he came down on the dove and had his wicked way with the dove. When he was finished, he rose up, and as he was just going flying away from the dove, he was about 20 feet away, he heard the dove saying, I am a dove, and I just got a bit of love. And he was thinking to himself, God, this sounded very good. It was rhyming and all. I am a dove, and I just got a bit of love. Here he took no notice of it. He went flying away again anyway, down across a couple of more fields, and down below on top of a white thorn bush, he saw another bird. And he said, to be great now, he said, if I could make it 2 in a row this morning. So down below on top of the white thorn anyway, he saw a very small little bird. And he dropped down his altitude again. And as he was coming down nearer, he discovered it was a blue tit. So to cut a long story short, he had his wicked way with the blue tit. And when he was finished, he was rising up about 20 feet above the blue tit, and he heard her saying, I am a blue tit, and I just got a little bit. God, he said, that sounded good again. He said, they're all rhyming this morning. First one was, I am a dove, and I got a bit of love. I am a blue tit, and I got a little bit. But God, he said, that's amazing. Things seem to be going well. So this time anyway, he went flying down over the river. And he said, wouldn't it be great if I could make it 3 in a row this morning? So he was flying down over the river, and he was fairly far up, and looking down below on the river, he saw a duck. So he dropped down, and you know, when the brandy was really working, he was after coming down about halfway, and he was looking down, and for a couple of minutes he could see 2 ducks. But when he came down further again, it was only 1 duck. But anyway, to cut a long story short, he came down and had his wicked way with the duck. And when he was rising up off the river, he was just going to flying away. And he heard below on the water, hey, I am a drake, you made a mistake. This is a little story about, you probably heard this one before, about Timmy Paddy Mickey. Timmy Paddy Mickey was a man in a particular parish that knew every single thing that was going on. He knew who everyone's name is, or who everyone's name was. He knew who was calling to who, and who wasn't pulling with who. He knew who had money and he knew who had nothing. But when he was going to school, he went to school 3 days in the year. When he was a young fella. The day of the summer holidays, the day of the Christmas holidays, and the day of the Easter holidays. He was one day inside in the classroom, and indeed he wasn't following the curriculum very well, and the teacher asked him, and there was an inspector there the same day. She thought she'd be safe enough asking him this one, because she knew he wasn't following anything. She said, how would you divide, she said, 6 potatoes between 2 people, give him an equal amount? And he was scratching his head for a while, and he said, your best way out of that, he said, would be to mash them. That was all right. When he grew up, he went 2/3 of the ways up the church. So that automatically he knew what was going on above in the altar. One look over his right shoulder would tell him who came in below late. And one look over his left shoulder would tell him who was above in the gallery. That went on for a while, but it was this way, you see. There was a mission in the parish, to say, and 'twas of a Wednesday night. Now, I'm not going to tell you what a missioner would be on about in rural Ireland of a Wednesday night, but you have a fair idea. But here was Timmy Petty Mickey 2/3 of the ways up the church and about halfway through Mass, and 'twas a stormy night, you see. And the 2 doors below at the end of the church were going in noon, agus an owl, with the storm. And there was a few late stragglers coming in, and he'd be just going to give a look sideways, but there was no need, because he knew by their step who they were. And he knew by how many steps they took what seats they went into, so there was no need to look back. And if anyone was out of tune in the choir upstairs, he'd give a small look to the other side, and he knew exactly who they were and what mistake they were making before they made it at all. But the 2 doors below were going in noon, agus an owl, and the storm was blowing, and the missioner above was roaring out his sermon. And here was Timmy Petty Mickey, and he'd take it all in, when all of a sudden the 2 doors burst open below. And in came this big 17-stone slapperchan of a woman. And up the stairs to the gallery she went, left, right, left, right, left, right. He had a fair idea who she was too by her step. And out to the front of the gallery she came and put her 2 elbows up in the banister, you see. And there she was, and she hadn't a fierce interest in what the missioner was saying, so she started going into a bit of a sleep, and she started nodding forward and backward and forward and backward, and if he shouted loud, she'd wake up suddenly and she'd look around again. But just under where she was, there used to be the clock of the church, which was taken off by the cleaner to be cleaned, you see, before the mission came around, and she forgot to put the clock back up in the devil of a hook that was holding it. And the hook was directly under this big 17-stone slapperchan of a woman, you see. And here she was above, and she was trying to nod off again, you see, as the sermon was going on. And Timmy Petty Mickey knew she was up there. He was giving a nod sideways glance up there, and he had a half idea that at this stage she would be nodding off. And the missioner saw Timmy Petty Mickey giving a nod, look back to see how the one above was getting on, and she nodding off to sleep. And here she was, and she forward and backward and forward and backward, when all of a sudden the law of gravity took its toll. And out over the banister she went, and as she was coming down to see this big devil of a hook, well, I don't know how to put this now, but 'twas the pre-tights era. And she was wearing, do you know, them suspender things. Oh, the elastication of them things. She was wearing one of them suspender things. Well, as she was coming down, didn't it get caught in the hook? And it left her halfway down towards the floor and sucked her back up again. And then it left her all the way down towards the floor and sucked her back up again. And there she was, and she down and up and down and up and swinging around like a pheasant cock would have hanging up for next Sunday's dinner. One leg facing for the altar, and the other one for the south of France. Here she was, and she down and up and swinging around, down and up and swinging around, and Timmy Petty Mickey was just going to look back, and the missioner knew he was going to look back. And the missioner, looking down at him, roared, if any man looks back, no one sees what I'll see, he'll be struck blind for the rest of his life. And Timmy Petty Mickey had to think about that, because of all the people going to be struck blind for the rest of his life wouldn't suit him, he thought. And here was your one, and she down and up again and swinging around, and the missioner was just going to give another roar, and he looked down the direction of Timmy Petty Mickey a second time, and he said, if any man looks back now and sees what I'll see, he said, he'll be struck blind for the rest of his life. And again Timmy Petty Mickey gave a half look back, and the third time the priest roared it. You're to hell to us, Timmy Petty Mickey, he said, I'll do fine with one eye.
now we have Peter Sweeney. He's going to sing a song for you, The Rocks of Ball.
Come all you loyal heroes, and listen out to me. Don't hire with any farmer till you know what your work will be. For you rise up in the morning, and from clear daylight till dawn, you never will be able to plough the rocks upon. My shoes they are all wooden, my stockings they are thin. My heart is ever fearful now, for fear that they might give in. My heart is ever fearful now, from the clear daylight till dawn. I never will be able to plough the rocks upon. My curse upon you, Sweeney, you nearly have me robbed. You're sitting by your fireside with your doodeen in your gown. You're sitting by your fireside from the clear daylight till dawn. You never will be able to plough the rocks upon. Now rise up, gal and Sweeney, and give your horse a feed. Oh, feed him oats and turnips now, that grows on yon green lawn. I feed him oats and turnips now, from the clear daylight till dawn, or he never will be able to plough the rocks upon. I wish the sergeant major would come for me in time, and place me in some regiment, all in my youth and prime. And place me in some regiment, from the clear daylight till dawn. I'd never more be able to plough the rocks upon. I'd never more be able to plough the rocks upon.
And now we have Eileen Buckley, who's going to sing a song for you entitled Dingle Bay.
The sun is sinking o'er the westward. The fleet is leaving Dingle shore. I watch the men row in their curraghs as they mark the fishing ground near Skellig Moor. All through the night men toil until the daybreak, while at home their wives and sweethearts kneel and pray that God may guide them and protect them, and bring them safely back to Dingle Bay. I see the green isle of Valentia. I mind the caves around Lochhay, and gannets winging with abandon as they watch the silver store that comes their way. I also see a ship on the horizon. She is sailing to a country far away. On board are exiles feeling lonely, as they wave a fond farewell to Dingle Bay. Long years have passed since I've been homeward, and time has left me old and grey. I sit and muse about my childhood and the happy hours I spent at Dingle Bay. In memory, too, I see the hill of Brandon and the Isle of Inishmore seems far away. I'm always dreaming of my homeland and that little spot I left called Dingle Bay. And that little spot I left called Dingle Bay.
Now our next performer of the evening is Michael O'Leary, and he is going to sing for you a Shanos type song.
Of all the money e'er I had, well, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I done, well, alas, it was to none but me. And all that I've done for want of wit, to memory now, well, I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. Well, if I had money enough to spend, oh, and leisure time now to sit a while, there is a fair maiden in this town, and she surely has my heart beguiled. Her rosy cheeks and her ruby lips, well, I own should I have my heart enthralled. So fill to me the parting glass. Well, good night and joy be to you all. And of all the comrades ere I had, well, they're sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts ever I had, well, they wish me one more day to stay. And since it falls unto my lot that I should rise now and you should not, well, I gently rise and I softly call, good night and joy be to you all.
Last year, after their All-Ireland hurling final success, we had the Kilkenny star DJ Carey here with us. And we have with us tonight a man who sang a very appropriate song on that night. We have Dennis Healy, and he's going to sing for you The Rose of Mooncoin.
How sweet is to roam by the sunny Sour stream, and hear the dove coo 'neath the morning sunbeam, where the thrush and the robin their sweet notes entwine on the banks of the Suir that flows down by Mooncoin. Flow on, lovely river, flow gently along by your water so clear. Sound the lark's merry song. On your green banks I'll wander, where first I did join with you, lovely Molly, the rose of Mooncoin. Oh, Molly, dear Molly, it breaks my fond heart to know that we two forever must part. I'll think of you, Molly, while sun and moon shine on the banks of the Suir that flows down by Mooncoin. Flow on, lovely river, flow gently along by your water so clear. Sound the lark's merry song. On your green banks I'll wander, where first I did join with you, lovely Molly, the rose of Mooncoin. She sailed far away o'er the dark rolling foam, far away from the hills of her dear Irish home, where the fisherman sports with his small boat and line on the banks of the Suir that flows down by Mooncoin. Flow on, lovely river, flow gently along by your water so clear. Sounds the lark's merry song. On your green banks I'll wander, where first I did join with you, lovely Molly, the rose of Mooncoin. Then here's to the Suir with its valley so fair, when oft times we wandered in cool morning air, where the roses are blooming and the lilies entwine on the banks of the Suir that flows down by Mooncoin. Flow on, lovely river, flow gently along by your water so clear. Sounds the lark's merry song. On your green banks I'll wander, where first I did join with you, lovely Molly, the rose of Mooncoin.
And now we have Mary Toomey to sing for you a song, a very local song here. It's a song about Sonny Creedon's Ginnet, and it was composed by Dan Herlihy.
In 1946, in the spring of the year, around Conscious Corner the Ginnet did steer. He was covered with hair from his head to his heels, and well camouflaged for the bones to conceal. Down round the creamery he lazily lumbered, knowing very well that his days they were numbered. Said he to himself, I will take one last look At the creamery's big buildings, it's Millhouse and Brook. He rounded the corner, up the hill he did go, and cast one last look at the fields he did mow. His knees they were wobbling and soon gave away. He lay down in the dyke where he died the next day. May I'm informed, was hastily told, she went up to Sonny who had a grave cold. When Sonny found out that the Janet was dead, with cursing and swearing he jumped out of bed. When the evening grew calm and dying down was the fuss, May she went up and she boarded the bus. She went into town in a terrible haste to get some undertaker to bury the best. Con Murphy was busy, he hadn't the time. She phoned down to Martin's who weren't in line. She retraced her steps back to Carriganay, where she was met by the sportsman, I hear people say. Come tell me your story as quick as you can. To bury this Gillette, sure I am your man. He fixed up his business in a clerical way, and was to bury the Janet the following day. Dan he came down and he wore a dark frown. His pay for the day was around £0.5. He ordered of Mayfair to give him a spade, and very soon the grave he'd have made. Jack Shea was summoned with Buckley's grey mare to come to the spot of the tragic affair. He slung the old Janet way down in the Ray, where he was to be buried the following day. Dan, he came down and he wore a dark frown. His pay for the day was around £0.5. He ordered of Mayfair to give him a spade, and very soon the grave he'd have made. He shoved him right in as far as he'd go, and that wasn't far, I'd have you to know. He cut down some bushes which were near at hand, and threw them over the carcass with a grain of sand. When the job it was finished, he strolled up to May, who spoke fine and grover whilst drinking the tea. They were both disturbed when Sonny did shout, and the sheepdog walked in with a bone in his mouth. With cursing and swearing and jizz there was in it. Oh Lord, says Sonny, 'tis the leg of the Janet. Dan made for the door as quick as he was able, and cast one last look at the knives on the table. He opened the door, up the road he did fly, and when he was at home, he heaved a deep sigh. A few days after I roamed to the spot, I tell you, I can't now relate the fright that I got. Some instinct told me the ditch far to climb, and there all the dogs had a wonderful time. Now this Janet is finished, and I'm finished too, and my friends and my neighbours, I bid you adieu. I think from this country I had better part, if I don't want a knife sticking out of me heart. That's it.
And now we have another local song composed by Donald Driscoll and sung by Dennis Healy.
There are tales of epic sieges in the history of our land, but this one is worth relating with the man that played the hand. It is not the siege of Derry or by Ginkle of Athlone, 'tis the siege of Gallencartog by a noted Jurrion. Jerry was to sweep this village like a mighty ocean wave. By the power of Murphy's brewery, not a living soul he'd save. On the floor of each dwelling, he would blow the people's brains and reduce each shack to atoms with 100,000 grains. When his gun was oiled and ready, sure the first place he did go was to Mrs. Timmy Buckley in possession of P.O. She was open to destruction with a gun behind her back, and a litany of lingo was the signal for attack. She besought this mighty bio to have mercy on her life, having swiftly granted pardon then to Larry's with the strife. There the conduct was so savage that it made the missus screech, and the house of Mrs. Driscoll was the next in Jerry's breach. In the latter place a widow meant to hold a man at bay. She's a native of Cork City, and her name it is O'Hay. When she saw this naughty neighbour was so daring and defiant, that she took him down to Denny's for a fresh and frothy pint. Having taken leave of Denny's, sure he fired into the air. Having gone down to the office, he was like a polar bear. And the fury at its zenith, with a host of fancy names, made O'Riordan run to safety and put terror in Sir James. In the trembling village later were policemen and JPs. They were out to capture Jerry for the jail and legal fees. Transportation to the Urals, it was often in the news, and the native place of mention was at Thomond Calaboose. Says the justice to the prisoner, who was standing mid police, you will not be fined 1 farthing, and you need not keep the peace. For the latter it is lacking in this world of today, and the nations there preparing for a fierce and fiery fray. Though now not participating in the North Atlantic Pact, in a new dispute in Berlin we may very quickly act, to send Jerry to the Kremlin with his double-barrel gun, and he'll put Malenkov and Stalin and Bishinki on the run.
We've come to the end of tonight's presentation for LTV in the Tavern in Clondrohid, and thanks to our hosts here tonight, Teresa and Paddy, for having us here. And before we're played out now by Dennis Lucy with the Stack of Barley, a very good night to you.
It's just a year ago today I left old Erin's Isle. My heart was throbbing in the soft light of my Colleen's smile. In all my dreams I seem to hear her sweet voice soft and low. I know she's waiting where we said goodbye in old Mayo, for two Irish eyes are shining and an Irish heart is pining, where I kissed her and caressed her in the gloaming long ago. Loving Irish arms will press me, and through Irish love caress me, and sweet Irish lips will bless me when it's moonlight in Mayo. Her Irish eyes like beacons shine all through the darkest night. I know their sweet love beams will always fill the world with light. The roses of her cheeks will lend enchantment to the sea. And when the shamrock wears the dew, I'll wed my own Colleen, for two Irish eyes are shining, and an Irish heart is pining, where I kissed her and caressed her in the gloaming long ago. Loving Irish arms will press me, and through Irish love caress me, and sweet Irish lips will bless me